There is a specific kind of silence that happens when you check a lottery ticket and realize the numbers match. It's the silence of a brain trying to process a statistical impossibility. The odds of winning the national lottery jackpot are about 1 in 45 million. To put that in perspective, you're statistically more likely to be canonized as a saint than you are to win the jackpot. Yet, people play, and occasionally, people win. When that money hits the bank account, the assumption is that the problems stop. But for a specific subset of winners, the deposit marks the beginning of a complete financial and personal collapse. Economists and psychologists have spent decades studying this phenomenon. They found that sudden wealth doesn't change who you are. It acts as a magnifier. If you're bad with money when you have £100, you will be catastrophic with money when you have 10 million. The liquidity allows you to make mistakes at a speed and scale that was previously impossible. We're going to look at 5 people who beat the 45 million to 1 odds only to lose everything. The most recent example of this phenomenon is Adam Lopez. His story is notable not because of the amount he lost, but because of the terrifying speed at which the dream turned into a medical nightmare. In mid-2025, Lopez was a forklift driver living in Norfolk. He stopped at a corner shop to buy a drink and, on a whim, picked up a scratch card. He went back to his car, scratched the panels, and realized he had just won £1 million. He later told the BBC that he was stunned into silence, shoving the card into his glove box as if it were contraband. His bank balance jumped from £12.40 to £1,012.40 overnight. Lopez immediately did what almost every financial advisor screams at you not to do. He quit his job. He removed the structure from his day-to-day existence before he had a plan for what would replace it. He bought a Range Rover Sport for himself, a Range Rover Evoque for his mother, and booked a first-class trip to Barbados. The spending itself wasn't the issue. £1 million can absorb 2 cars and a holiday. The problem was the lifestyle shift. Lopez entered what he later described as a 3-month party. He was burning the candle at both ends because he could finally afford the wax. It lasted exactly 12 weeks. By September, the physical toll of his new life caught up with him. He developed a blood clot in his leg, likely exacerbated by the sedentary, alcohol-fueled lifestyle he'd adopted. The clot traveled to his lungs, causing a bilateral pulmonary embolism. He was rushed to hospital, unable to walk or breathe. In an interview given during his recovery, he noted the grim irony of his situation. He had a bank account full of cash, but he was lying in the back of an ambulance where his net worth was irrelevant. If Adam Lopez is the example of a physical crash, Michael Carroll is the example of a total behavioral collapse. His story is the most famous cautionary tale in British lottery history, and for good reason. In 2002, Carroll was a 19-year-old binman working in Norfolk wearing an electronic tag for drunk and disorderly behavior. He bought a ticket with the last pound in his pocket and won £9.7 million. The British press immediately branded him the Lotto Lag and the King of Chavs. Carroll leaned into the persona with aggressive enthusiasm. Carroll bought a mansion in Swaffham called The Grange, a sensible investment on paper, except he turned the grounds into a demolition derby track. He bought old cars specifically to smash them up in the back garden, racing them around the property at all hours of the night. The noise and chaos destroyed the property value not just of his own home, but of the entire surrounding area. He spent thousands a week on drugs. He claimed to have slept with 4,000 women, spending a fortune on brothels and escorts. But the real drain on his finances was the leech effect. When you win that amount of money at 19, you become a magnet for hangers-on. Carroll was known for his extreme, chaotic generosity. He would hand out bundles of cash to friends who would disappear the moment the money stopped flowing. By 2006, the cracks were showing. He was jailed for 9 months for fighting in public after terrorizing his neighbors. By 2010, the money was gone. He had to sell the Grange for £600,000, a massive loss on his initial investment. Carroll declared bankruptcy. He had managed to burn through nearly £10 million in less than a decade. But after losing it all, he moved to Scotland. He got a job in a slaughterhouse, then a biscuit factory, and eventually went back to delivering coal and logs. In recent interviews, he claims to be happier now than he was with the millions. He works 7 days a week, lives in a rented flat, and says the money was a cage he built for himself. While Carroll lost his money on chaos, John McGuinness lost his on a bad business idea. McGuinness was a hospital porter living in Motherwell. In 1996, he won £10 million. Unlike Carroll, McGuinness was a regular guy who wanted to help his family and his community. He gave £3 million to his family and £750,000 to his ex-wife. He bought a nice house and upgraded his lifestyle. Everything was stable until he decided to invest in his passion. McGuinness was a die-hard fan of Livingston Football Club. He pumped £4 million into the club, acting as a guarantor for their loans. He saw himself as the savior of the team, using his windfall to propel them to success. This is a common trap for lottery winners. They assume that because they have capital, they're investors. But capital without expertise is just liquidity for someone else to drain. Football clubs are notoriously difficult businesses to run profitably, and Livingston was no exception. The club ran into severe financial difficulties. And because McGuinness had used his personal wealth to guarantee the club's debts, the club's creditors went after him. He ended up having to sell his properties to cover the debts. By 2009, the man who had £10 million in the bank was essentially penniless, forced to rely on charity and benefits to survive. If Michael Carroll was the example of what happens when you give millions to a rebellious teenager, Callie Rogers is the tragic case study of what happens when you give it to a child. In 2003, the National Lottery allowed 16-year-olds to play. Rogers was a 16-year-old checkout assistant earning £3.60 an hour when she won the $1.875 million jackpot. She remains the youngest jackpot winner in UK history, and her story is the primary reason that record will never be broken. At 16, the brain is not equipped to handle the psychological pressure of extreme wealth. Rogers spent her money on the things a teenager values: acceptance and appearance. She spent £18,000 on breast augmentation surgery, hundreds of thousands on designer clothes, and endless nights partying. But the most damaging expenditure was, once again, the generosity tax. Rogers estimated she spent £500,000 on gifts for friends and family. She bought cars for people who couldn't drive and paid for holidays for people who, years later, wouldn't speak to her. The money made her a target. She was assaulted by 2 women in a nightclub who demanded money, leaving her unconscious with broken ribs and smashed teeth. The mental toll was severe. Rogers spiraled into depression, leading to suicide attempts and serious drug use. She later stated that she felt like a walking bank machine, unsure if anyone actually liked her or if they were just waiting for the next payout. In 2021, years after the fortune was gone, Rogers was banned from driving after crashing her 4x4 into a hedge while high on cocaine. During the court hearing, it was revealed she was on universal credit benefits. The £1.8 million was completely gone. However, Rogers' story has a bit of a redeeming arc. She went back to school to study social care and became a nurse, finding value in work that had nothing to do with her bank balance. Her disastrous experience also forced the government's hand. Because of what happened to Callie Rogers, the minimum age for playing the National Lottery was eventually raised to 18. While Rogers was too young, Lee Ryan was too reckless. In 1995, just months after the National Lottery launched, Ryan won £6.5 million. At the time, he was awaiting trial for handling stolen cars. Ryan earned the nickname the Lotto Lag because he became the first jackpot winner to serve a prison sentence. 9 months after becoming a multimillionaire, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison. He sat in a cell knowing he had a fortune waiting for him on the outside. When he was released, Ryan bought the Hollywood caricature of luxury. He purchased a £1 million mansion with a swimming pool, a tennis court, and a hangar. He bought a helicopter, he bought a private plane, he bought a fleet of cars including a Ferrari, a Bentley, and a BMW, all fitted with personalized number plates like LEE1 and LEE2. The spending was compulsive. He later admitted to handing out cash to strangers in the street, desperate for the dopamine hit of being the rich guy. The millions eventually evaporated through a combination of bad business ventures and theft. He lost money on failed investments that he didn't understand, and he claims his housekeeper stole a significant sum. By 2010, the £6.5 million was gone. Ryan hit rock bottom harder than most. He spent 2 years homeless, sleeping in a sleeping bag on the streets of London. Today, Ryan lives in a small flat in South London and works in painting and decorating. In interviews, he describes the lottery win as a curse. He claims he's happier now, calling himself a spiritual billionaire, having realized that the money stripped him of his actual life. He traded a £6.5 million prison of gold for a sleeping bag and somehow found the sleeping bag more comfortable. When we look at Adam, Michael, John, Callie, and Lee, it's easy to judge them. It's easy to sit there and think, I would be different, I would be smart, I would invest. And perhaps you would, but the data suggests otherwise. The problem with winning the lottery is the speed of the transition. Building wealth slowly allows you to build the character necessary to keep it. You learn the value of a pound because you had to work for it. You learn how to manage assets because you acquired them one by one. Lottery winners skip the tutorial level and go straight to the final boss. They're handed the keys to a kingdom they don't know how to rule. They're suddenly surrounded by sharks, predatory financial advisors, friends with business opportunities, and family members with debts, while lacking the defense mechanisms that wealthy people usually develop over decades. The National Lottery actually has a dedicated team of advisors who try to prevent this. They offer legal advice, financial planning, and media coaching. But you can't advise someone out of their own nature. If a person is impulsive, generous to a fault, or prone to addiction, £10 million just removes the brakes. The odds of winning might be 45 million to 1, but the odds of keeping it seem to be even lower. If you won £10 million tomorrow, be honest, would you actually be sensible, or would we be making a video about you in 5 years? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this look into the darker side of sudden wealth, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into business and culture. Thanks for watching.